All right, today we're going to go over how to add a Windows server to a Jenkins CI pipeline as a build slave. So to start, we've got my Jenkins instance here running on localhost. I'm going to go to Manage Jenkins, and under Manage Nodes, I'm going to add a new node. And node name, usually you'd want to use something like the host name on the server. In this case, we're just going to call it remote because this is a demo. And I'm going to select that as a permanent agent. If you have a plugin that allows you to do a different option here, that'll show up here, but in the default Jenkins configuration, permanent agent is the only option. Now I'm on my node setup page. The description field is if you have any server-specific configuration or labels you want to put on here. These are not going to be read in by the system, just to help you identify the server better. Number of executors is going to be how many jobs we want running concurrently on this system. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 so it matches the current build master. The remote root directory is where we want to install this Jenkins agent and where we want it to store any logs or other configuration. So I've set this up on my remote agent, on my remote server at C Jenkins. Now labels is something we're not going to use this time around. These are things that can be given as a parameter to a job or a series of jobs to tell it where you want to run. For example, if you had a build pipeline that had to run on Windows nodes or Linux nodes, you could label all of your Linux nodes with the Linux label, and then rather than give individual node names that you want this job to run on, you would give the Linux label to that job and it would round robin depending on what servers were free at the time. Now usage, we're going to leave that alone for now as well. And go straight down here to launch method. There's 3 ways by default that we can launch the Jenkins agent on our remote node. We have launch agents via SSH, pretty standard stuff there. Launch via execution of a command on the master. And now this is something if you had a Java environment set up that you wanted to do in advance, and you needed it to run some sort of command in the background first using the agent jar that's provided with Jenkins. This is where you would configure that. And then the last choice here is let Jenkins control this Windows slave as a Windows service. This one I don't like so much personally because it's giving a lot of permissions over to Jenkins. You have to give it either the local administrator username and password or a local user that may or may not have the permissions you need. There is a 4th launch method that you can use for this as well, but you have to go and enable it. So let's take a look on how to do that. I'm back in my Manage Jenkins menu here, and in order to enable that last launch configuration, we're going to go to Configure Global Security. And just at the bottom of the page here, I'll scroll up a little bit to make it easier to see, but there's a heading down here called Agents. And we're going to go ahead and allow that to use a random TCP port for JNLP agents. We can also define a fixed port if we would like, but random is going to work for our purposes today. Let's go ahead and save that off. And now we can go and set up our node again. Okay, I'm back here at my node configuration, and now if I go under launch method, there will be launch agent via Java Web Start. And it'll give us some options here for the Jenkins working directory. We don't want to worry about that right now. Let's go ahead and save this. And we see that the remote node has been added to our nodes page here, but it's offline currently. So let's take a look at how we can solve that. If I select the remote agent, it'll give me 2 ways to connect it to the master. The first is launch an agent from the browser. And this is a JNLP setup, which we're going to be using. But we also have the option to run a Java command that reconnects the agent to our master via JNLP. This page can also be a bit of a sanity check, just in case you want to double check your configuration first. If you have anything that's not a host name or an IP address in your Jenkins URL, such as localhost, it will show up here, and when you're trying to set up the Jenkins agent on your remote node, it'll think you're trying to connect to localhost. So you want to make sure there's a valid IP address or a DNS name in this configuration here. Let's go ahead and download the launch agent, and I'll save the file. And now we can go over to the build node. All right, now I'm on my remote build server. I've got my slave agent, which I downloaded from the Jenkins master, and a PowerShell terminal open at that location. So the command I'm going to use to start this is java ws-o. Now, if you don't have Java installed, this is not going to work, obviously, so you do need Java installed on this node before you continue with this process. Now I can verify that this is the Jenkins remoting agent application. I'm okay to run that, and it's going to go ahead and connect me via JNLP to my Jenkins master. If I wait here for just a moment, it's going to have a file drop down. We are going to hit File, Install as a Service, and this just means that this agent will persist over reboots or any updates or patches. So let's go ahead and do that. Just to make sure this process was successful, I'm going to do a get service and look for my Jenkins slave agent, which is right here. That is the name of the service, and I confirm that it's running. Now let's go back to the Jenkins master and check this out. So I'm back here on my Jenkins master, and I've confirmed that the remote agent is up and running. Let's go ahead and run a job on it. I have a job here called print node name, and if I go into the configuration, it's just a basic PowerShell command. This job ran on environment node name, and that's just a variable in the Jenkins scripts that I can run on here. I can use the node name variable to tell where I am. So let's restrict where this can be run and make sure it runs on master. Save and build. Now the job is finished. I go into my console output and confirm this job ran on the master. If I go back to the job configuration and change the label to remote and build it again, we see that the job ran on the remote node. All right, that's the end of this snip. I hope you all enjoyed, and thank you for watching.